Grand Theft Auto 6 is, of course, the holy grail of open world games. We're all waiting for it, but we have no idea when it's coming. And there is a meantime. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanks, let's talk about 10 games you can play while you wait for Grand Theft Auto 6. Before we get started, we're not talking about specific clones of GTA, but games that let you do specific activities that you might do in GTA games, like hunting, like open world driving, something similar to a GTA game in a different country, gangster simulators, heists, that type of stuff, either really specifically or even in some fairly broadly. Starting off at number 10, the Mafia Trilogy. But the most recent Mafia game, Mafia 3, the definitive edition, is obviously where you want to go if you want to do it, but let's talk about why. First off, this is one of the most in-depth and fantastic crime stories that has been told. They do so much character study, it's so well acted. The narrative side of this game is pretty much flawless. Now, that said, the gameplay is not the best thing you're ever going to play in your entire life. It's not bad. It didn't really develop a lot beyond Mafia 2. Now, that being said, when they applied the mechanics from Mafia 3 to the original Mafia to remake it, great. Loved it. At number 9 is The Hunter Call of the Wild. Now, this is a little bit different than Grand Theft Auto, obviously. It is a hunting simulator. It is absolutely beautiful. It does have a big, wide open world. It maybe is not quite as exciting, let's say. But to call it anything other than in-depth, intriguing, and immersive. Like, here's the deal. You have a big area to move around in. You do have like four-wheelers and stuff to move around faster, but generally you are slowly stalking prey. You're using stealth, you're using sense, you're using like collars and all of the like hunter-oriented stuff. It's also got great multiplayer. Like, I've seen some people kind of rag on the multiplayer, but I think it's a really good way to spend some time with some friends, some people you typically game with. It's a really good game, and it will scratch an itch that you might have from Grand Theft Auto if you give it a chance. It is different though, and that's the one thing you really have to think about, but it's available, and to anybody who has the patience to try something different, I would certainly recommend it. At number 8 is Beaming Drive. Now, Beaming Drive is a vehicle simulation primarily. Now, the reason why this game is so great is not that you're going to go around and execute heists or get involved in an amazing narrative. No, it is fully about crashing cars, which, as you know, is something that is very fun to do in Grand Theft Auto. I want to go ahead and propose that in terms of doing this one thing, this game does it better than any other game. Beaming Drive uses soft body physics to get a result in the handling and impacting that other games just aren't up to. And it's because this is like the whole reason the game exists. The game calls itself a quote-unquote dynamic soft body physics vehicle simulator. It has some pretty impressive graphics, but again, the reason you're playing this game is for crashing cars. At least that's why I'm playing this game. Maybe you're playing it for trying not to crash cars, doing insane stunts. I've seen people play it that way. I'm playing it to crash cars because it does it better than basically any other game. It's still in early access, but it's only $25, and it's definitely an experience that is unmatched anywhere else in terms of what it does. And I wonder if it is going to influence the kind of car physics we're going to see in Grand Theft Auto 6. I hope so. At number 6 is Mad Max. Now, this is a little bit of an older game. If you remember way back in the day, I did the Mad Max Before You Buy here on GameRanks, and I had nothing but good stuff to say about it. I still think the same thing. I look back on the game, and it's not quite as pretty relative to everything that we see in everything else now, but obviously we're talking about a very different environment and world than Grand Theft Auto. But in terms of the type of game we're playing, I think Mad Max probably outdoes Grand Theft Auto in hand-to-hand combat. I compared it to Arkham way back in the day, and obviously it was a Before You Buy, so I hadn't beaten the game yet. And I think the more I played it after the BYB, the more it kind of took on a character of its own. And while it was very clearly inspired by Arkham, it still stands out to me as some of the better combat in an open world game. And it's nice that, other open world games since then have sort of taken that torch. Like, The Spider-Man game slightly indulges that type of combat, but I would love to see the next Grand Theft Auto nod to that sort of combat system. In terms of the hand-to-hand, obviously the gun stuff, they've gradually moved in a more first-person friendly direction, and I think that that's also good, and also kind of makes it a little unlikely they're going to do this. But I especially enjoyed that aspect of Mad Max, and there's a ton of other great stuff as well. Fantastic game, extremely underrated. Even if you're not jonesing for GTA stuff, play it, but it will scratch that itch too. At number 6 is Just Cause 3. Now, obviously, you are not in Just Cause for the story. Very simple stories in all of the Just Cause games. You're in it for the destruction. If you love flying planes, that's also a good reason to be in Just Cause, because you get the kind of Grand Theft Auto level of absurdity, and they've also developed that area of the game. Really vehicles that are not cars in general, and also skydiving and bombs. That stuff is all developed significantly better in the Just Cause series. Now, I would say Just Cause 3 is just a little bit better than Just Cause 4, and I don't know that I would really put it on the mechanics, but more the open world. It's just better built, better arranged. Even though Just Cause 3 and 4's map sizes are both really comparable, 3 has a lot more water, and so the land area is a little bit more compressed. And I think that that works out just a bit better. Like for me, something I've done in every Grand Theft Auto is just try to get on the highest building, jump off, and do something nuts. That's basically the point of Just Cause. So if you want some of that, that's the best place to go. At number 5, it's Red Dead Redemption 2. Okay, so like, you know exactly why we're bringing this up. It's basically Grand Cowboy Auto, Grand Theft Horse. I don't know. There's enough jokes, you know? Like, we can make plenty of jokes about what it is, but Red Dead Redemption 2 is perhaps the crowning achievement in the open world game. Are there some things that I maybe prefer from Grand Theft Auto 5 over RDR2 that have to do with the level of realism that they brought in? Yes. Does that change the fact that RDR2 is probably the seminal game of the whole genre? No. The fact is, they went as hard as they could in the development of this game, and it paid off. It's really a damn achievement, you know? I mean, narratively, mechanically, there's nothing that you could do more of than this game. Now, I don't want to say better because taste is very subjective, and like I said, I kind of in some ways prefer Grand Theft Auto 5, but when I've played the hell out of Grand Theft Auto 5, and I have, having a new world to explore, even if it is different in setting, in time, in expectation, and in a lot of ways, frankly, mechanically, there are no cars, obviously, it's still just perhaps one of the best games ever. At number 4 is Saints Row the Third Remastered. So the way that I look at Saints Row, really the whole series is Grand Theft Auto with mods, but by default. Everything about Saints Row is Grand Theft Auto turned up to 11. It's totally nuts. It's bonkers. Like the stories, the world, the characters, the character creator. Really everything about that game is just amped up and crazy. There's insane weapons, there are insane vehicles, insane scenarios. Nothing about it seems like something that would actually make it into a game, but rather kind of like a conglomeration of a bunch of different mods. Part of that is owed to the design philosophy of the game, which the design director, Scott Phillips, said Saints Row 2's design philosophy was to just put everything into the game, whereas 3, they created some things that they felt were just unlike anything else and sort of defined what Saints Row was. Also, it's really funny. Like, just to be completely clear, this is probably the funniest entry of the series, at least for me. The first 2 are funny, but they're kind of extremely unfocused, whereas Saints Row 3 really knows what it is in terms of comedy and just delivers the whole way through. It's silly, it's big, it's nuts. At number 3 is Sleeping Dogs. Now, Sleeping Dogs is an interesting game because it's very much along the lines of a Grand Theft Auto, but in a different cultural location, Asia. Now, if you remember earlier, I said the combat of Mad Max is kind of an Arkham City type combat, and it'd be cool to see Grand Theft Auto incorporate it. This is probably as close to that as we get. The combat in this game is very Arkham City inspired, and the rest of the game is very Grand Theft Auto inspired. The combat's got a lot of depth, and it's a ton of fun. It may feel a little bit repetitive, but like the game itself, for me, continually justifies all of the various aspects of itself. Also, the city of Hong Kong is depicted really, really well in this game. Like in all aspects, you can find photos that mirror the colors and feel of this game. Not necessarily realistically in terms of like lighting, shading, and everything, but like stylistically, it really looks like Hong Kong. It's a beautiful game, very stylized, and while it has its flaws, it's a very interesting title. At number 2, we have the Watch Dogs series. Now, I wouldn't recommend the original Watch Dogs, but I think it's probably worth talking about Watch Dogs 2 and Watch Dogs Legion. Watch Dogs 2 kind of made the formula work. When Watch Dogs 1 was kind of clunky and a little slow-paced and didn't deliver on everything, particularly the driving, Watch Dogs 2 did deliver on the driving and brought in a whole slew of gadgets and other more hacking-oriented stuff. Like, we were kind of sold Watch Dogs as kind of a grand hack auto, and really Watch Dogs 2 delivered on that. Now, they took it a step further with Watch Dogs Legion, setting it in London in a police state era, and I think that really either of these games add enough to the Grand Theft Auto formula that it's really, really interesting. I prefer Legion personally a little bit, but like the bright colors of the San Francisco version of this game, Watch Dogs 2, work really well for a lot of like sort of breaking up the scenery sensibilities. As long as you exclude the original game, the Watch Dogs series is a great tide-you-over set of titles. And finally, at number 1, if you're into robbing places and heists and all of that stuff, Payday 2 is a great place to go. Now, obviously, Payday 2 is a very different game in terms of genre. It's a first-person co-op shooter. In some ways, it's a lot like Left 4 Dead, but like heist-oriented. But in that respect, I would also say that it really stands in for some of the best elements of the Grand Theft Auto plot. The final heist in Grand Theft Auto 5, for instance, is so epic, and tons of that stuff happens in Payday 2. It also controls well, and despite a kind of not great microtransaction economy, it's always been at least a fun game that I like spending time on. A quick bonus game for you is the Lego Grand Theft Auto. It's called Lego City Undercover. It's not a particularly new game. You can get it for Switch though, and it's kind of an interesting little goofy title. Instead of being the criminal, you are the cop though. That's the main difference. But everything else is very heavily borrowed from Grand Theft Auto. Very fun game. But what are some games you're playing to tide yourself over in the meantime? Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is, of course, the subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.